Hi, this is Mark Sanborn. I'm in my office in Lone Tree, Colorado. And normally when I do a podcast, I'm the guy answering the questions. But today, I'm going to be the person asking the questions because Michael Angelo Caruso is a longtime friend. He and I have appeared on programs together as speakers. But like most speakers, he's multi-talented. He writes books, he consults, he coaches. I don't know if he juggles or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. So today we're going to talk about, for the next 20 minutes or so, work hacks, 300 plus cool ideas to speed career success. So Michael, welcome to our show. It's a different thing for me. It's great to be talking with you.
Good to be with you again, Mark, too. We have known each other a long time. I have the highest respect for you, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to have a chance to interview you because, I've told you this, but years ago, maybe it was we used to call them e-zines, the digital newsletters. You said something that was so simple in retrospect, but so powerful. You talked about smiling your way into a room. And I'm kind of a stoic guy. My wife often says, is anything wrong? And I go, no, I'm being me. I just look like one of those grumpy old guys. But I realize, it doesn't do any good to be happy on the inside if people think you're angry on the outside. And just smiling when you walk into a room, not some kind of cheesy, creepy smile, but just looking happy makes all the difference. And so the good news is I associate that technique with you. So every time I smile going into a room, I have you to thank for that.
Well, it's so important. Thank you. It's so important for speakers, of course, or presenters, because people are watching us all the time. Often we're the only person in the room nobody knows.
Yeah.
I think it's important for leadership, too, because people model their leaders, right? So when leaders set the tone like that, and they wonder why all of a sudden they have a morale problem, it's their fault. They're the ones who are so uptight all the time, or at least look like they're uptight. So yeah, it's a good little people skill to have. And when I put together this Work Hacks book, Mark, we wanted to have a lot of those types of simple, practical tips, the kinds of things that most people don't think about, although we learned them at one time. I think it was Plato that said, we never really learn anything new. We're just reminded of things we already know. This book is full of those types of memories.
Well, and I like books like this because when I was a kid, I would read Norman Vincent Peale and wonder why it took, 12 pages to make an idea. And I now know, as an adult, the importance of story. But there's a lot of room for a book like yours where you can literally open, on any page and find an idea. Matter of fact, you begin the book with five ideas about how to use the book. So there's even ideas about how to use the book. Yeah. And there's all sorts of topics from meetings to motivation to communication, what I would call practical stuff. So I got to ask you, I didn't give you this question in advance, but what are your 2 or 3 favorite ideas from the book? You got 300 of them. So pick a couple that you say, I just really like these ideas.
Well, let's start with one that you referenced kind of obliquely just now. In the front of the book, there are cool ideas for using this book. And one of those tips is to not read the book in order. Like a lot of books have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? All narratives are like this. But one of the best things about books like this is you can search by topic. You can be thumbing through it and just stop where you want to. You don't miss anything by starting, say, in the middle of the book or with your favorite section of the book. There are 3 sections. One is on communication, specifically proactive communication. One is on professional development, and the third is on persuasion or selling techniques. So you can go to your favorite place. And there are tips in the book on reading, because any tool that turns me on to more ideas. What's that old joke? I'll grant you any wish, the genie says to the guy on the beach. And the guy goes, okay, I want 3 more wishes, right? Any way you can multiply or exponentially grow the treasure chest is pretty cool. So I give lots and lots of websites and even movies you can go see and get ideas from. So we're just trying to turn people on to best practices so that life doesn't have to be so hard, right?
It shouldn't.
No.
So give us one. Give us a specific one.
Well, let's talk about reading. I was in a seminar the other day and I was taking kind of like a straw poll of how people read these days. And I was surprised to see so many people still reading paper books because if you listen to the media, nobody's reading books anymore. But everybody said they not only like to read, but they like to hold the paper book in their hands. When you go to audiobooks, you can do something that's quite magical that most people don't think of. And that is most people speak, and you know this as a speaker, at about 140, 150 words a minute. If you're listening to a motivational speaker, he's probably cruising at about 180, 190 words a minute. But people can read a lot faster than that. Well, reading takes time, right? So if you can read faster than 150 words a minute, you're certainly going to do it. You would never slow down unless you were really digesting the grammar and the syntax and the syllogism and all that stuff. But the good thing about audiobooks, if you have certain types, is you can speed up. You probably know this. You can speed up the sound of the reader's voice, which means she'll read to you at a faster words per minute rate, which means you get more reading done. But most people don't think about that when they're deciding to read. They go for the quick, easy decision, paper or ebook. So there's one tip. I mean, so now not only are you getting to read more, but you're saving time. And those are the ideas I just love, because like I say, anything I can do to hack my way into something sooner is all right with me.
Well, life is short. And, the nice thing about audible books is audiobooks or Audible is, you can listen when you drive. I have been a big fan over the years of great courses. And those are real deep dives. I mean, they're college level courses on subjects of interest. And, over time, you can get an entire college course driving your automobile. It's one of the few things you can do and not, fool yourself into thinking you're multitasking. You really can listen and hopefully pay attention while you drive. One of the ideas for this book I think would be fun if you're a manager and you have a staff meeting, whether it's weekly or monthly, is, just slide the book across the table, have somebody open it to a page and read something, or give them a topic and tell them to go to page 39 and read the second idea.
Oh, you bet.
You can turn this into a nice little, because of the way it's written, you don't have to worry about somebody jumping into the middle of a long, convoluted story that takes 10 minutes. They'll just be a paragraph size bit of information. So, that's another way that you can use the book.
Mark, if I may, you've got the book there. Let's show everyone, let's expound on this tip, because I really like where you're going with this. So if you open up the book so people can see it, that's called a printer spread, everybody. And the way the book is designed is that the left and right page is a printer spread. So the topic there is how to deal with underperformers. And that fits on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I know some authors are funny about this, but I'm okay with it. And this book is self-published, so I don't have to answer to anybody. Anybody who's in charge of a team can put that printer spread on a copy machine and make placemats for people at their weekly or monthly meetings. You don't even have to talk about the placemat when you put it down. They've already got a takeaway from the meeting, right? And in some meetings, that's going to be the most valuable thing they learn. So I love this time management. You referenced driving and reading at the same time. Again, most people just get pulled into that dark vortex of rage, road rage. And I just sit back in my car and I get more reading done. So it's just that little shift that tools like this allow you to do that just turned me on.
By the way, this underperformers put the fear of God in your meeting. You pass these out to everybody.
I know.
Let them figure out who it is you're talking about, right?
They're like, is it me?
And your stress is a killer. How to avoid it? You mentioned something that's a favorite of mine. Avoid drama junkies. We sometimes will say about somebody, wow, he or she's really had a tough go of it. Oh, yet something terrible happened to them again, or they're having another dust up with so-and-so. And we realize that there's a common thread in all of that. And often it's the person. And there are people who are addicted to drama. They thrive on it. It's gasoline, it's fuel. And so the idea, and sometimes you can't completely avoid them, but we get sucked into feeding their drama, or they pull us into getting us involved in the drama. And I don't know, I'm guessing you're like me, I have enough drama of my own without getting sucked into other people's drama. But I just opened the book randomly to that page and went, that was a head nodder. That makes perfect sense.
Well, look at society, Mark. The newspapers are predicated on, they love conflict, right? Conflict sells better than good news, which is why in the newspaper business, they call it above the fold, where the part that used to be in the newspaper stands, when we used to have newspaper stands, is that it was always bad news, the yin and the yang, the Democrats versus the Republicans, the yes vote versus the no vote. And so a lot of people, you're right, they take that in, it becomes part of their daily regimen. And so we start to think after time that stress is not only normal, that it's desirable, because I've got to have enough stress just to compete with you. If I'm not seeing eye to eye with you, it's almost like a stress competition. You know, I'm busier than you are. I must have more status. It's crazy how we think about stress these days. So I wanted to make sure we had a little section in there on how to not have that situation.
What are your insights on stress as we let it be created by social media? I'm a little bit puzzled by people saying that social media stresses them out. I've got lots of faults, but that's not one of them. I do a lot of social media, but I don't let it stress me out because I've got some simple rules about what I do and don't do and how to avoid wasting time. But what's a really pithy insight into how to make more out of whatever social media presence someone has?
Well, it's a nice dovetail between stress and social media. Social media, as I understand it, is supposed to be fun and free and frivolous, and yet things are politicized so easily now when something gets posted. So my tip is that, we're each the publisher of our own newspaper now. You're the publisher of the Mark Sanborn Press, and it's your Facebook page, and you get to decide the tone of your page. If you want it to be political, just make sure you post something about the president every day. I promise you'll find an audience. In my case, and it sounds like you're this stripe too, is if I'm posting something that can even obliquely be interpreted as political, I actually put what we call in the speaking business a pre-call, and I say this is not a political post. So if somebody violates the tenets of my page in my thread, I'm totally within my rights to delete the post, remind them this is not a political post, and I keep my page clean that way. And then, of course, I don't jump in the swimming pool with people who do that. There's an old saying down south. I know you've heard it because you speak down there so much. But the saying down there is never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it.
Exactly. Well, and I've reflected many times about how many people I've ever met that said, I changed my political views because of a Facebook post, and the answer to that would be zero. We typically surround ourselves with people who think similarly. I always say, the 3 C's is number 1, be civil. If you're not civil on my page, that's another reason to get booted. Goodbye.
Right.
Get booted and get unfriended, although typically they're not friends that are the uncivil ones. Be civil, be constructive. That is, add to the conversation. Don't make it a pile on, right? Like a football game where the guy's down. You don't need 3 more guys to pile on. And then be creative. I just did a post, and we talked about it before we shot this, about my sons at Ohio State. He's in I think, a very, very good fraternity, Sig Up, but they suspended the Greek system activities there because of some investigations and some other Greek activities. And I created a post, and I simply said, I was disappointed. And I had one of the most constructive, civil, eye-opening exchanges where I really broadened my perspective, not because somebody came in and posted something nasty, but because they posted an opinion I hadn't thought about, and that's social media at its best. But I agree with you, control it. It's your page. It's like, you don't let somebody else control your brand. Don't let somebody else control your social media. So are you working on another book, or what you've got other books like this, life hack books. What other books would you recommend for somebody that says, wow, this is a great book. I got a lot of good ideas. What are you working on? What would you recommend in addition to this book?
Well, so looking in the rearview mirror for just a second, you're right. I've got a brand called 5 Cool Ideas, and I came across this brand because, like you, when I'm traveling, I'm not nearly as efficient when I'm working. And the narrative book with the beginning, the middle, and the end can be challenging. But when you're collecting ideas to drop them into this, I call it a collection book because of the format. I find that I can write a book like this, and then I can write a more important book, every other book. And that way I can keep the pipeline filled, and I can stay active. I can be releasing these ideas, time releasing them to my adoring throng. The next book is more substantial. It's about the power of the first impression, and specifically the first 15 seconds of the impression. I've been speaking about it now for 2 years. I've got tons of content, tons of research. And it turns out that the first 15 seconds of an interaction sets the tone, not only for the interaction, but often for the entire relationship. and we kind of wobble our way through that first impression. If you think about things that normally happen, eye contact, the silly things that we say, the opening lines, all this kind of stuff, what could happen if we were a bit more strategic about it? And so I break down that 15 seconds, almost like a CSI investigation, and then offer best practices for making the most of them.
Very cool. That sounds like a great, and I agree. And probably most of us aren't particularly attentive to those first 15 seconds, and we should be.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Where do people go then? What's the main vein, the main resource for all things Michael?
Sure. So I'm all over social, just like you, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. I've got a terrific YouTube collection these days. My website is michaelangelocaruso.com. Very simple. Michael, if you're into details. And we've, as long as a lot of people are going to be seeing this in the next couple of months, Mark, I want to plug an event we're having in January. This is January 25 through 27. And the event is called Activate. It's leading and selling through influence. So it's perfect for salespeople, leadership, entrepreneurs. And it's this idea of connecting with people faster and better so that we can get more done. It's in Tampa, Florida. Have you been spoken at the Saddlebrook Resort in Tampa?
Oh, yeah. Beautiful place.
One of the top places in the country, and we're glad to be going back.
Well, Michael, you're a good guy. You're full of great ideas. I know from personal experience. I appreciate you as a friend, and it's been fun for me to play host for this podcast. And please, if you're listening in, consider the Activate event. It'll be a great time and a great place, frankly, and not a hard sell in the winter months to go down to Tampa. And thanks for your time today. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been Mark Sanborn and Michael Angelo Caruso. All the best.
Thanks, Mark.